Okay, so we're rediscovering trust. Oh, now here's some trust, but it's just words on a page. Welcome to Time Out with PC. I'm Pastor Cherie, and we've got a great subject today called Rediscover Trust. So they say trust is the foundation of every loving and healthy relationship. And if that's the case, we should try to understand the inner workings of how we can be better with trust. So here's a definition: a firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. The verb for trust is believe. Wow, simple, huh? To believe that someone is good and honest, will not harm you, or something that is safe and reliable. And so have you ever heard someone say, well, my sister told me not to trust him? And then you heard people say, trust me, I know about these things. But you find out later you couldn't really trust them. So I'll tell you a little story about the scorpion and the turtle. I don't know if you've ever heard this story, but it's an analogy to show us about trusting people who've broken trust. So the scorpion really wanted to get to the other side of the lake. And he couldn't get there because he couldn't swim. And he saw this turtle and he said, would you let me ride on your back and take me over to the other side? And the turtle said, you got to be kidding. You'll just sting me and I'll die. He said, no, I need to get to the other side. Why would I sting you? I won't sting you. He said, no, you're going to sting me and we'll drown. He said, no. I need to get to the other side. Trust me. So he let the scorpion get on his back, and sure enough, they got out to the middle of the lake, and he stung him. And they started to go down. And as he was going down and they were both drowning, he said, why did you sting me? He said, well, it's just my nature. Wow. So we're talking about trust with relationships. It's something we all want from other people, but it can be hard to give. It can be hard to build, and it can be hard to repair if it's broken. So it's not built by just one action or one word at a time, but a million little things. Now, King Solomon, who wrote the book of Proverbs, supposed to be the wisest man ever, wrote and understood little things that erode trust and steal our ability to build loving relationships. Let me read you what he wrote in Song of Solomon 2:15. He says, catch for us the foxes, the little foxes that ruin our vineyard, for our vines have tender grapes. So in this picture, we see this beautiful vineyard. It's not being destroyed by something big and obvious, but these little foxes that are going underneath the bushes, and they're biting off the vine at the root and totally destroying it. So it's not always the glaring, obvious things that are relationship killers, like lying or cheating, that break trust. But it's a lot of those little things, a combination of small behaviors. Maybe you can think about some of these as I read them to you, whether or not you've been a victim of these behaviors or you've been a participant. So behaviors like making excuses. Have you met people that it's always an excuse? All right. Following through on commitments. Overstepping boundaries. Making negative judgments. Here's a big one. Revealing information that was meant to only be shared with certain people. Wow, that happens all the time. Every interaction we have with people is either building or tearing down trust in our lives. Now, you don't have to give the same level of trust to every person. You shouldn't do that. But if bonds of trust are foundational, then we need to learn how we can strengthen those bonds, because when they break down, they're so hard to get back and build back. Now, for instance, families are affected for generations when the family unit breaks down. It affects generations of families. Business failures affect all the employees and also affect the local economy when something breaks down because of poor management, of corruption. It could be anything. And all the families that are attached to those businesses are affected by it. What about governments? When they break down, when people lose trust, it affects the whole nation on every level. Proverbs chapter 3, 5 and 6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him and he will direct your path. God is completely trustworthy. That's why he says, trust in the Lord. And that's the thing that was always getting the nation of Israel in trouble, is because they wouldn't believe what God told them and they wouldn't act on it. So over and over again, they were getting in trouble because they didn't trust equal believe. Trust equals believe. Believe equals obey. Wow. And so trust is reliance on our faith. Faith is trust in action. So if they had really trusted God, that he said, if you go into that land, you can take it. I'll be with you. Don't be discouraged about the people that are in there. If they had just believed it and acted on it, they wouldn't have spent 40 years wandering around in the wilderness. Now, I read an interesting passage just this morning in the book of Deuteronomy, actually chapter 2, when they finally, Moses was finally getting the people ready to go into the promised land. They were going to have a new leader, Joshua. They were going to have new temptations and new territory. But God laid out specific instructions for them. And here were two things that he said you cannot do. One thing, you cannot go to Mount Seir because it belongs to Esau. Wow. I saw something I'd never seen before. Esau and his family and generations had already been living on that mountain, prospering, had money, because he told them you can buy food and water from them, but you can't take anything because I promised it to him. So there they are enjoying this wonderful land, and they never had to go through the wilderness. Another area, same chapter, Lot was given another territory. Lot, he had to run from Sodom and Gomorrah. He had children by his daughters, but God gave him land, and he told the Israelites, you can't take any of Lot's property. So these two guys, Esau, who sold his birthright, Lot, who left Sodom and Gomorrah, are enjoying land that God promised because they believed it and took it and went into it and never had to deal with wandering in the wilderness. Wow. Maybe you've decided to never trust certain people ever again based on past experience. But let's talk about and have a look at the trust test. Now, I've got a few points, and I'm going to read them to you. Number one is boundaries. This is a trust test. Do you respect boundaries? And when you're not clear about them, do you ask if it's okay or not? You ask, you're willing to say no. Number two, are you reliable? You do what you say you will do. Be aware of your limitations and don't overpromise. When you pay for something with a credit card, it says that you promise to pay. Now that's reliable. The fact that they're not going to have to come after you to get the money that belongs to them for something you bought and haven't paid for yet. Okay. Accountability. You own your mistakes and apologize and make amends. Trust test. Confidence keeper. You don't share experiences that are not yours to share. You need to know that your confidences are kept, and at the same time, you keep sensitive information about other people confidential. You're not a gossip. Trust test. Integrity. Wow. Do I practice what I preach? Can I be depended upon to live out my beliefs and values? And that's who we are when nobody's looking. And then lastly, are we non-judging? People can be transparent with us without fear of being judged. So we're on a journey of growth where we can have confidence in our decision making about what is truly trustworthy and what is not. This confidence will grow in direct relation to our relationship with God, who defines our worth, and God defines our value. Trust Him. Thank you for joining me today, and I'd like to ask you to do me a favor. If you would like, share, and subscribe this podcast with others so we can get the word out. Thank you.